When I was stranded in the desert, I flagged down a police officer. I told him that I was stranded and that my ride left me, and I was trying to get to a certain church, and I had the address to the church, and I asked if he could take me. I also told him that I was from the LA area and that I was trying to get back home as well, so I just needed a ride to this local church and they were going to help me get home from there. That sounds simple, right? I assumed as a last resort that at least they would be able to take me to the police station and I would be able to use their phone in a safe environment waiting for my ride. But of course they looked me up in their system and they had seen some of the history that I had. I didn't tell them about the situation that happened where I thought I might be being drugged. But I guess common protocol was to just take me to the hospital because they didn't know where else to take me. To this day, I seriously don't know why I couldn't just give the police the address. I'm pretty sure it was local for them to take me to the church that I was trying to get to. So I remember the police officer escorting me to the front desk at the hospital and basically getting me checked in. I don't remember much after that except for them taking me to an isolation room and making me give them my shoes because I wasn't allowed to have any ties on them, and I think I had to give them my clothes also. I don't know if one of the other girls who I opened up to that was there at the house told the police that I mentioned that I might be in a place where I was being drugged, but I think that they actually just wanted to take me for like an examination for that or something, and I was probably pretty reactive to that and I didn't really want to be examined. I don't remember the hospital staff treating me very well, to be honest, at this place. It was all protocol, you know what I mean? Like, give them my clothes, put me in a room, and I don't know actually if I got upset when they were gonna try to examine me or something, but I honestly don't remember. The next thing I remember is being basically in the facility. And the only thing I really remember about the facility is that it looked like a prison, and we got to go outside and take walks, and I remember it being like completely gated and it looked like I was in prison. This place had a track. It was kind of like a place where you could run or walk outside, and that was the highlight of my time there, is going on that. And I remember, I think I met this one girl and we would always go together and we had some good talks, and that's like all I remember about that facility. The only other memory that I have is when I got put in isolation over something really stupid. Every time that I got put in isolation, it was something where I was trying to stand up for myself and I was asking staff questions, and then anytime I started to go and ask questions, even if I presented a calm, quiet, collect, attitude, like I was talking to the staff just like I'm talking right now, and they would say that I was escalating and they would put me in an isolation room and just basically drug me up with some kind of sedative. I didn't get locked up as much as I did like the first time in Colorado because I kind of learned how the system worked, and I learned, not to like bother staff because you could just look at them wrong and they would put you in isolation. None of the staff ever wanted to really do their job, and sometimes they wouldn't even want to be bothered. Like if we stated that we needed a hairbrush or something, like it was like asking for too much, and that could potentially cause them to give you an attitude. And then if you said, well, I really need something like a toothbrush, they'll be like, is there going to be a problem? And we would be like, what do you mean? And they'd be like, are we going to have a problem here? And that was like their way of saying, like, get away from our front desk or we're going to put you in the isolation room. So I just learned to leave staff alone and go to those so-called supposed meetings that they have, which never did anything, and just work the stupid program that they had. I do remember asking the front desk about going home and telling them that I'm from the LA area and that I needed to get back, if there was any way I could get a transfer. But anytime I tried to talk about anything like that, I was just basically ignored and told to leave the front desk. I remember having one phone number and one address. I had the address to the church and Daniel's phone number, and that's like all I had held on to. And I was like, I need to call this number, And so I would call whenever I could, or try to call, or try to get them to call. And I just remember that eventually one day Daniel showed up and got me out of there. So yes, Daniel is the one that I told you in a few videos before that was trying to like basically put the moves on me and trying to get with me in a very vulnerable situation. And I was afraid that he was going to attack me, but he did not. And but I remember, like, he came along with the same guy that was also living on the church campus, and so the two of them drove me back to LA. I was like, thank God that someone actually picked me up from this place, because I was in the middle of the freaking desert, you know what I mean? I was like 2 hours away from my house and from my church, so it was like getting home was a miracle for me. Home for me at that point was my church, because obviously my grandparents were not okay with me coming home, especially because I had left twice and I wasn't like doing the things that they wanted me to do. My grandparents basically told the hospital staff to keep me, basically, because they're tired of all the things that we were all going through. And so I arrived back at the church parking lot, and I was just so glad to be like back in my area where I lived. I'm not sure where I went from there, but I remember I talked to this lady Alma when I got to church, and I knew her from way back because her daughter and I used to go to a smaller church when we were like 16 years old, and we hung out and we even partied together at one point in time. But I knew her and her mom, and so that was the first person I talked to when I got back to the church. And then there was this other lady, and I don't remember her name for some reason, but I ended up staying with her. I think I lived with her for a few months, and I just tried to get back into church. I mean, like, I went to church with her, and I didn't have my own car, so I couldn't like do anything really, but I would just go to church all the time. I was able to detox from all of the meds that I was on, and finally getting back to normal again. When I started getting back to normal again, I started to try to talk to my grandparents again. I was in a much better place, and I think that they realized it. I don't know why, but for some reason I started wanting to go home again. It was really hard living with other people, to be honest, and I just wanted my own privacy. Not that I had any privacy at my grandparents' house, but for some reason I felt like at least I could have my own room. At any rate, we made an agreement and I ended up going back home. And that was my last time ever going to one of those facilities. Thank God.